So once again, welcome each and every one of you. Each and every one of you in today's session. Sorry about that. Today we're going to be talking about introduction to vulnerability research, and your mentor is going to be Mr. Gideon. He was last year's cohort winner, and right now he's a mentor. So first of all, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank you very much, Gideon, for taking up this extra role on your hands. So thank you on that. So today, as usual, Gideon is going to give his recap of his session, and then we're going to get into Q&A. His expertise is mainly on offensive security, but hopefully I'm not wrong anyway. But I think he'll introduce himself further, and then we can kick off with the session. So Gideon, you can unmute yourself, and yeah, if you want to introduce yourself, and then we can give a recap, and then we kick off from here. So Gideon, welcome.
All right. Good day, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right. Firstly, I would like to thank Karim for this opportunity, right, to come talk to you cybersecurity enthusiasts on vulnerability research, right? And by way of introduction, I am Gideon, a Nigerian, right, a cybersecurity professional, specifically in the field of pen testing. Already said it, offensive security, right? And today I will be talking about vulnerability research, right? Now, over the last few weeks, you must have started the boot camp where you've had different sessions on different concepts, right? Now, today we'll be looking at vulnerability research. Already you have, it's going to be like a brief or a recap of the recorded session, right? And it will interest you to know that or note that anything that will be said today or whatever thing we're going to be discussing today is going to be extremely important when you get to your capture the flag simulation game, right? Because when you get there, some of the concepts we've discussed or the previous mentors have discussed in the last few weeks up to now and moving forward, you will see them there, right? So if you want to come up best or you want to come the best, right, you have to pay attentive. You have to pay attention, right? Listen, interact, attention, and all of that. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Now, what exactly is vulnerability research? When you hear vulnerability research, what comes to mind, right? Now, vulnerability research, of course, is the combination or the concatenation of two words. You have vulnerability, you have research, right? Now, when you say vulnerability, I'm sure we are all familiar with what a vulnerability is, right? A vulnerability is simply a flaw, a weakness, or a defect in a software, or it could even be a system, right? Now, research is, you trying to get more knowledge about a particular thing or a particular concept, right? That's you going extensively to check on something, to get more idea, more intel, right? Now, vulnerability research is simply the process of identifying, analyzing, and understanding security weaknesses in software, hardware, or systems before malicious actors do. Now, cybersecurity professionals or cybersecurity enthusiasts, some of you in the future might want to delve or dive fully into vulnerability research, right? So that is why this session is important. Now, what exactly is the goal of vulnerability research? Why do we do vulnerability research as cybersecurity professionals? What is the importance? What is the relevance, right? Of course, the goal is to discover vulnerabilities, right? So that you can responsibly disclose them to, the organizations that have been affected or the parties that are affected by such or certain vulnerabilities and also patch them, right? Now, already we've defined what vulnerability is, right? There are important concepts for you to understand when it comes to vulnerability research. You need to understand what an exploit is, right? What's an exploit? An exploit is simply a piece of code that takes advantage of a vulnerability. That's what an exploit is. You need to understand what is called CVEs. In the context of security or in the context of vulnerability assessment, vulnerability management, vulnerability research, there's something we refer to as CVEs. Now, CVEs stands for common vulnerability exposures, right? Basically, it's like see it as an identifier, right, for publicly disclosed or publicly known vulnerabilities. That is what CV is. Now, the way CV looks like, or an example of CV could be, you could see something like CV maybe 2024, then maybe some random numbers. Now, that 2024 that you're seeing there is telling you the year it was disclosed. Why the random numbers you're seeing there is more like the identifier which was attached or which was given to that particular vulnerability, right? So when you see CVE maybe hyphen 2025 or CVE hyphen 2023, then another hyphen with random numbers, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the ID attached to that CVE. The 2024 is the year the CVE was discovered. Very, very important, right? Now, another important concept you might want to know about is zero-day vulnerability. In the context of security, we get a lot of 0 days almost every day or every time. There are even sites that are dedicated to 0 days that you can, when you get there to check, you might be talking now, perhaps the way we are conversing, a 0 day might have been discovered in the last 5 minutes, right? Or in the last 10 minutes. That's to show you how 0 days actually come up, right? Now, a 0 day vulnerability is simply a vulnerability that is unknown to the vendor, right? And no patch actually exists, which means when an attacker sees such vulnerability, it can get to capitalize on it, and the rest is history, right? There's no solution, there is no patch. It is unknown to the vendor. This is something that just recently maybe came out. There is no intel about it, right? That's why we call it 0 day vulnerability. Another thing I want to understand is about attack surface, right? Attack surface is simply the total number of possible points where unauthorized users can try to enter or extract data, right? Now, for us as penetration testers, before we actually delve into any penetration testing operation, we have to plan the attack surface properly, right? Of course, ethically, we're doing everything with consent, right? You have to plan the attack surface properly. You have to map out your entry points and your exit points. Now, in penetration testing, there's something called scope, right? Now, there's something called in scope, there's something called out of scope. Now, in scope is where your penetration testing should cut across. For example, pen testing is actually wide. You have internal pen testing, you have external pen testing, you have wireless security pen testing, IoT pen testing, web app, and the likes, right? Now, there are certain, when you're working with your scope, when you're given the scope of the document, or let's say the rules of the arrangement, whatever, right? There are particular parts or entry points you are not meant to, get to, or your pen testing operation or assessment must not get to, right? But there are certain parts that it must cut across. So basically, that is mapping out the attack surface so that you don't put your hands where you're not supposed to put your hands. Of course, you're following ethical measures. Now, in vulnerability research, the methodology we use, of course, the first thing is usually reconnaissance, which is what we call information gathering. Now, you have to understand the target. Before you go ahead exploiting any vulnerability, I tell people this. We see a lot of folks, or a lot of beginners, when they enter into cybersecurity and then you tell them to hack something. I've met a couple of guys, let's say you give the person a web application or a particular API endpoint or something. The next thing the person is telling you, I tried using Nmap and I'm not seeing any ports open, or maybe I'm seeing 2 ports open. That is not the first thing. That's even the wrong thing to do. First of all, understand what you are dealing with. Before a thief will decide to go and steal or rob somebody, you need to understand who you are dealing with. Understand the architecture of the door or the gate. You don't just go ahead to steal or rob somebody. It doesn't work that way. In the same vein, in cybersecurity, before you go ahead exploiting any vulnerability, you need to understand the target, right? Understand the software version. Interact with the target. What operating system is this target using? What are the services running? Before you go ahead using automated tools, right? Now, another thing we perform is what we call static analysis, right? In static analysis, we basically analyze the source code or the binaries without executing them. So yeah, we perform what we call source code review, right? And there are tools we use for this, like IDA Pro, G-Hydra, and the likes, right? We also have dynamic analysis. Yeah, you analyze the application while it is running. So basically, difference between static. Now, when you hear the word static, in English, static just means something that is constant, not moving, stagnant, right? So the difference between static analysis and dynamic analysis is this. In dynamic analysis, you are analyzing the application while it is running. That is why it is being executed, right? For static analysis, you're analyzing the source code or the binary without execution. That's without running it. Now, in dynamic analysis, we have a lot of tools. We have FRIDA, we have X64, DBG, and a whole lot. Now, another important thing, which is very, very important in the concept of vulnerability research, is fuzzing. There's something we call fuzzing. Now, fuzzing is an automated method of feeding malformed or unexpected input to a program so as to trigger crashes. So basically, what fuzzing means in our world, let me bring it down now, is imagine you have a door, right? You're knocking at the door, you're knocking repeatedly. Now, you're trying to see what happens. You're trying to see, okay, what is the end point? What's this thing going to lead to? Now, let's assume somebody is inside or at the other end of the door. When you're knocking excessively, what happens? The person has to come and be like, yo, you're knocking at my door, you're banging my door. What is the problem? What do you want? That's what fuzzing is, right? You're putting unexpected input to trigger crash. You want to cause issues. You want to see bugs. You want to see the application behaving in a way that it is not meant to behave, right? And we have a lot of tools for this. We have fuzzer, we have pitch, boof force, and a whole lot. Of course, another important thing, which is very, very common, which you must have heard of, is reverse engineering, right? Reverse engineering is simply understanding the inner workings of a binary or firmware without the source code. That's what reverse engineering is. You're trying to understand how was this system built? How did they build this system? How is the application working, right? Without using the source code. And of course, we use G-Hydra for this. And another thing, which is the last thing for vulnerability research, that's under the methodology, is what we call proof of concept, right? Basically, proof of concept is, okay, I have a particular exploit, right? This is a particular vulnerability. I have to go ahead to exploit this particular vulnerability. This is how I did it. This is blah, 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 and all of that. That is what a proof of concept is, right? You're showing your own proof of how you exploited a particular vulnerability, right? Now, the last thing I'll talk about real quick is responsible disclosure. There's something we call responsible disclosure, which I said already in the recorded session, right? What exactly is responsible disclosure? Now, responsible disclosure is an ethical process, of course, of reporting a discovered security vulnerability privately to the organization, right? Before making that vulnerability public. So what happens is, okay, yes, you're a vulnerability researcher, you're a cybersecurity professional, you found a vulnerability, right? You go ahead to tell the organization, yo, this is what's affecting your organization, this is what I found, this is my proof of concept. Now, you do not go ahead showing an organization you have you discovered a vulnerability without showing a proof of concept. Many of cybersecurity enthusiasts run automated tools like Nessus and the likes, Nikto, Nmap scripting engine, and automatically come up with a report. For example, if you've used Nessus before, Nessus is a vulnerability scanning tool, right? When you use it to check for vulnerabilities on a particular site, automatically it saves your results in the form of reports. You can get a report kind of this thing, more like a PDF or something, right, of the vulnerabilities. Some people make that mistake of taking that vulnerability to show or send to organizations. That is extremely wrong. First of all, you have to validate it because there's something we call false positive. It could be a false positive. You have to actually check, okay, these vulnerabilities that we've discovered, are they true? You have to find a way to interact with the application to see that, yes, these vulnerabilities are true positives and not false positives, right? So responsible disclosure, you discover a vulnerability, you create a proof of concept, you document it, then you report it to the security team, then you wait for the response and patch before you actually publish the vulnerability. And the vulnerability is given a CVE and put on exploit database and the likes. Now, somebody might be asking, what are the ways to actually find or practice vulnerability research? How can if I actually want to get in, what do I do? Or how do I get started? What should I do? Where should I lay my hands on? Now, there are a lot of, the good news with cybersecurity is there are a lot of vulnerable labs. There are plenty of vulnerable labs, right? You have Hack the Box, you have Try Hack Me, you have VulnHub, and a whole lot. You want to the best way to actually hack things, or the best way to get your hands on things, I tell people this, is actually to get your hands dirty. You cannot say you are a cybersecurity professional, you can't say you are a hacker, you can't say you are a pen tester or whatever, or security researcher, and you have not done anything related to it. It's just like you are making noise. You actually have to get your hands dirty on some of these things, practice on this platform, see how they work before you actually go ahead attacking real world applications, right? Some of you might actually want to even delve into bug bounty platforms like HackerOne, Bugcrowd, and the likes. So basically, that's just a brief recap or a brief concept on vulnerability research. Don't know if you have any questions for me, any contributions. Mr. Karim, over to you. I'm done.
Okay, awesome. So right now it's going to be Q&A. So as usual, if you have any question, feel free to raise your hand or type your question on the chat, and then we can ask Gideon your question, and he's going to try his level best to answer them to the best of his ability. Let me just also extend the questions to even questions about last year's bootcamp. If you have any questions regarding that, then also feel free to ask him. This is your time. So, yeah, anybody wants to take that on? So, Gideon, the first question is from Bethel. The question is it forcing or forcing? So basically what he was trying to say is fuzzing. So let me just clarify that. So it's fuzzing. Anybody else who has a question? You can unmute yourself or raise up your hand, whatever works for you, or type a question on the chat so that we can, proceed with the session. Anybody? Because from here, we are going to set up some practical labs for you guys to go and actually do this hands-on later on. We're going to release them as usual. But first of all, it's going to start the normal Q&A. Then after that, later on, you're going to see the different challenges for you to solve practically to look for vulnerabilities and answer the questions. So this is your time. Ask your question so that it can help you to answer some of the labs. So Gideon, another question from Rachel is, what are the ethical boundaries when doing this kind of work?
All right. Now, when doing vulnerability research, right, that's actually a good question. When doing vulnerability research, that's where the concept of responsible disclosure comes into the picture. Now, before you actually go ahead to perform a vulnerability research on a particular organization, right, you actually need to be sure you have the go ahead to do that. And that's the beautiful thing that comes with platforms like HackerOne, Bugcrowd, and the likes, right? Now, when you go to HackerOne, when you sign up with for an account, right, and you sign in with the newly account you recently created, you see a lot of platforms. For example, you might go there, you might see something like Apple now, right? Apple is releasing a particular what do we call this now? Okay, let's put it this way. Apple wants you to actually hack them ethically, right? See if you can get vulnerabilities in their system. Now, everything is ethical, of course, because they put it out there, made it open source in a particular vulnerability research platform. HackerOne is very, very popular. So that's when you're dealing with responsible disclosure, you're dealing with ethical boundaries. You need to be sure you actually have the license, because you do not want to go ahead attacking an application, maybe forcing an application now, or forcing a target using automated to some of these organizations have firewalls in place, they have IDS and IPS. They will automatically block you. They will deny anything you're doing, and it's just going to be like a waste of time or something. I don't know if I answered that.
Yes, you did. But in simple terms, let me just clarify that. Number one, as Gideon had mentioned initially, the most important thing when it comes to not only vulnerability research, but also generally penetration testing and any kind of security audits that you do, the first thing that you need to get is letter of authorization. That's your number one thing that you need in hand before doing any type of system audits. And then the second bit is responsible disclosure. Also, Gideon had mentioned that whenever you find any type of vulnerability, you need to go and disclose it to the owner so that they can fix it. So that's what responsible disclosure means. Before even publicizing about the vulnerabilities on the internet or anywhere else, it needs to be fixed, and then you can go and talk about the vulnerability if you have the authority anyway to do so. If they don't want you to go and talk around the vulnerability that you had discovered within their platforms or code, whatever the case, then don't do it. Or you can use pseudos. Like, for example, I did a pen test in organization X and discovered that there was 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and this is how I approached it. So you're not disclosing the type of organization that you targeted, so that other people will then go and try the same approach that you took in order to find the vulnerability again. So you need to be very careful with what you do with, such type of, let me say, gigs. But basically, yeah, that's it. So Gideon, there's another question from Kevin. He's asking if you could explain steps like the cybersecurity kill chain methodology to perform pen tests. So that's one. And then two, he says, let's say I get a job as a pen tester. What will be a day-to-day activities that he'll be taking? So generally, those are your two questions.
All right. For the first question, the um cyber kill chain framework, right, by Lockheed Martin, right? It's a very popular framework we use in cybersecurity. Now, basically, if I can remember very well, it has about 7 stages or 7 phases, which already I've mentioned some of the phases or stages in the course of this presentation. Now, the first thing you have there is reconnaissance, which is usually the first thing before we actually delve further into anything. You have to gather information, also called information gathering, right? You need to understand how is the system built? What softwares are they running on? What's the operating system? What services are running? Right? What are the underlying technologies and everything? So basically, you want to get as much intel or as much information as possible. And here you have passive recon, you have active recon. Passive, you are not engaging the target, right? You're doing everything. The target can't even see that this person is doing this. But active reconnaissance, from the word active, you are actively engaging the targets. Basically, you're probing the targets, right? And this works with using automated tools like Nmap. Now you're trying to run some kind of port scan or something, or vulnerability scan using Nmap scripting engine, right? Basically, if the target has IDS or IPS in place, if you don't make use of decoys or certain things to actually bypass these measures, automatically you get blocked. The next phase is weaponization. Basically, you're preparing your payload or your weapon or exploit, to attack a particular vulnerability. So this is where, when you hear weaponization, this is where, just like saying you're going for a battle. Before you go for a battle, you have to, before you go for a war, you have to prepare the weapons, your arsenal, to make sure that you are ready to deliver, right? And the next thing is delivery. After you've gathered information, you've prepared the necessary weapon, right, required for the particular attack. You have to find a way to deliver that particular exploit or payload. Now we use payload, right, to the particular target. It could be via a script, it could be via an email, it could be via a link, whatever. It could even be via USB. I'm sure you must have watched movies or you must have heard of situations where organizations, somebody could drop like a kind of USB on the floor close to the gate of the organization, close to the organization. Some random person might just sit and be like, yo, let me try this out, right? As soon as the person plugs into his system, the rest is history, right? Now, after the payload has been delivered, the next thing comes after is exploitation, right? So you prepare the tool in your arsenal, right? Then you deliver it to your target, right? Now, when the target executes it or runs it, the next thing is for you to exploit that particular this thing, trigger the vulnerability to execute the payload. That's what you're basically doing, exploitation, right? Now, after it has been exploited, installation, that should be the next thing. And so basically, in my own view, I would see it as you're trying to establish persistent access, right? You're trying to get more like a foothold of the system. That's what installation basically means. Then after installation, you have C2, which is command and control, where you can remotely control the compromised system. Then after that, you have actions and objectives, where after you've achieved the goal, the next thing you might be thinking of maybe might be privilege escalation or something called lateral movements, right? To try to see if you can actually get access into further systems or further applications or further devices in that particular organization. So that is just basically the cyber kill chain framework. Now, for your second question, what's the typical day-to-day activity in the life of a penetration tester? Well, this question, a time is going to come in the course of your bootcamp program where you'll be asked to document, right? I mean, like I think it's more like a report or something. Now, here's my advice to you. I mean, everyone, and not only to the person that asked this question. Take that very, 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 very serious. In fact, extremely serious. I cannot overemphasize how the concept of reporting and documentation is very, very important. Now, in your day-to-day activity as a pen tester, you'll be doing a lot of documentation. It's not every time you might be giving something to pen test. Now, it's not every time they might tell you, just as a pen tester, it's just to be checking for for possible vulnerabilities that could possibly infiltrate your organization, right? Check for, just make sure that everything is in order, right? Now, let's assume you find a particular vulnerability and everything. You need to come up with a proof of concept. Now, reporting, over time, we've seen that a lot of technical guys now, I mean, offensive security folks, don't find it hard to document or find it hard to report. That's where documentation, or find it hard with their soft skills. A time is going to come in the course of your boot camp, you're going to be asked to present or something, right? Build your soft skills. In fact, technical skills, simply take it this way from me. Technical skills will get you into your organization, right? Your soft skills are actually going to retain you inside that place. If you don't know how to communicate properly, if you do not know how to document properly, if you do not know how to report or present properly, you're going to have a very, very big issue navigating, no matter how technical you are. So simply put, the technical skills are very, very important, right? As much as your non-technical skills. So basically, that's just how the day-to-day activity of a pen tester is. And penetration testing encompasses a lot too. You have internal pen testing, you have external pen testing, you have wireless security, that's Wi-Fi hacking and all of that. You have web app pen testing, mobile app, IoT, physical security. So it encompasses a whole lot of things, depending on where your expertise is cut across. That's what you might be doing. In some organizations like startup now, you might even get to do everything yourself. Yeah, so that's basically it.
Thank you, Gideon, for that wonderful explanation. But just to add on top of that, in terms of your day-to-day activities as a pen tester, so basically how that's gonna look like. So also it depends with the organization. Let me just put it that way. But I'm just gonna give an general perspective. So number one, you're just generally going to be looking for vulnerabilities and weak points within the organization, either if it's the network or infrastructure. And then once you find the vulnerabilities, you need to make sure if they're exploitable or not. If they are, then you have to rate them, rate the risk to the organization. This is going to differ from organization to organization. What organization A perceives to be as a critical risk could be a medium risk or a non-risk toward another organization. So you need to understand the type of organization that you're working with and what do they consider as important or not important. And then once you've done rating your risks, is when now you, as Gideon explained, provide a report to the blue teamers. They're gonna fix it. Once they're done, your job is to go and verify, did the patch that the blue teamers provide actually working? So that's what you keep on doing continuously to keep on trying and improving the security flows within the let me say security posture within the organization. I think that's the right word. So yeah, I just wanted to add on top of that. Now another question is from Msambili. Yes, two in one questions. Number one, what tools do you typically use? So that's for you, Gideon, and why do you prefer them?
All right. I will simply say this. When it comes to pen testing, or let's say cybersecurity generally, whether of offensive security or defensive, or even purple teaming exercises, right? You want to build yourself in a way that you do not want to heavily rely on tools, right? There are times when tools are actually going to give you false positives, and I made mention of false positives. That's why you have to build your skills very well. Understand the basics. Understand. Do not rush the process. Take your time to understand things like operating system. Understand networking. I tell people this a lot. If, as a cybersecurity enthusiast, you can take your time to understand networking very, very, very well, you've saved yourself a whole lot of stress. Understand the concept of networking, understand about database systems and the likes. Now, when it comes to tools, I feel the three most popular tools every pen tester we would mention, which I actually use: Bob Suite, Nmap, Metasploit, and I'll add Google. Let's make it four, right? These four tools. These are the most important tools. Bob Suite. Bob Suite is more like a web proxy, right? We have Bob Suite, you have Metasploit, Nmap, and Google. Now, why did I say Google, or why did I mention Google? Now, with Google, I can basically get intel on anything I do not understand about. Now, have it in mind as a penetration tester, because you are called a pen tester, that doesn't mean you will know everything, right? There could be a time where you might be given you might be asked to actually pawn something on, or maybe an Active Directory system or something. And perhaps you've not heard of Active Directory, or you haven't used it before, or you really do not know how it works. You might get confused. You might want to make research on one or two things. And that's where Google comes into the picture. So basically build yourself in a way that you actually understand the system very well, in the sense that if automation fails you, you can manually navigate your way, because it's not every time automation is going to work. There's sometimes you could get false positives, or you get okay, this thing actually exists in so system, meanwhile it's not there, right? So that's to that. I believe I answered that.
Yes, I think that was totally clear. But let me just also add on top of that. When it comes to tools, this is how I look at it. For example, when it comes to scanning itself, we have almost thousands of tools that you can use in order to scan and get for open ports. So we have the common one, which is Nmap. We have ZenMap. We have RATScan. We what I'll suggest is number one, play around with the tools, and then number two, find the tool that resonates more with you or you are more comfortable with, because you, for example, you could find person A works more better with Nmap, but doesn't work well with let's say RATScan, right? So the most important thing is for you to play around with the tools and then stick to one tool and perfect on it. And then Gideon also mentioned about not relying on tools. I think that's the most important thing that you can do. Well, this is how I tend to look at tools. Number one, understand how the tool works. And then after understanding how the tool work is now when you can now go around and start using the tool. For example, if you look at WP Scan, how does it get vulnerabilities? You look at the code that is written and you get to learn how the tool analyzes the web application or the WordPress web apps to look for vulnerabilities. So once you understand that, because nowadays, as Gideon mentioned initially with his introduction, that right now, a lot of organizations have advanced detection tools, which are, for example, based on AI, which can actually detect if you're scanning the network and block you immediately. And then in turn, what that's going to do is it's going to just return scan failed, or it's going to return a false positive, and that's something that you don't want. So the only way for you to fully analyze this target that you're trying to look for vulnerability is if you do it manually. So it's very important to understand how the tool works so that you are able to know what it's actually testing for, so that if the tools is being flagged by the, let's say, firewall or idpss and then blocks the scans, you are able to go and do it manually. I've ever been in an engagement where I used the tool to scan the network. I wasn't getting really proper results, but when I did it manually, I found out that the target web application was vulnerable. So it's very important to understand how things work. Don't rely on tools, and also find a tool that you feel more comfortable working with. So I think that's generally it when it comes to the topic of tools. Another question for you, Gideon, is from Wahoo, and her question is: do you have any toolbox when it comes to CTF challenges? And if so, what are some of the tools that you do use, on a daily basis when it comes to solving CTF challenges, etc.? So yeah, tools.
All right. For this, I will answer it this way. Right. First of all, you have to understand that in CTFs, yeah, there are two different types of CTF challenges we have, right? You have the Jeopardy based CTF, and you have the attack defense based CTF, right? Now, depending on the one that caught, I have friends, for example, now, right, that really do not play attack defense CTFs. They are more of Jeopardy guys. Now, somebody will be like, what exactly is the difference? Now, attack defense CTF is more like Some of these machines you get from vonhub.com, right? That is just how attack defense CTF looks like, right? Now, in Jeopardy CTF, you're given challenges on different sections in cybersecurity, right? You could be given on web security, you could be given on OSINT, you could be given on digital forensics, reverse engineering, binary exploitation, and the like, just like in the course of your boot camp you're going to see in a bit, right? So different challenges for different sections, right? Now, when it comes to CTF toolbox, I could just basically tell you this. You could set up a virtual machine of Kali or maybe Parrot, right? And try to, depending on which CTF actually cuts across your interest. Now, you might want to learn both if you actually have the capacity. Like I said, I told you I have friends that do not engage. If you give them attack defense CTF, now they really do not know how to navigate. Like, for example, if you go to VonHub, you see a lot of vulnerable machines, right? Like Mr. Robot and a whole lot. Right now, when you download the OVA file, that's the Open Virtual Appliance file, if I can remember well. When you download it, configure it in your virtual machine, whether you're using VirtualBox, UTM, or VMware, whatever. Configure it there, then connect it to your Kali, right? That's your attacking machine, right? Either Kali or Parrot or Ubuntu, whatever, right? Put them on the same network. Now, see how you can actually exploit it. How can you get? There are some machines you get now, you won't even get the login details. You're not giving anything, and you have to find a way to get the IP address before you can actually do anything. That's where tools like ERP, app scan comes into the picture and some other things, right? So basically, if I want to advise, I will advise you start with Jeopardy first before you actually delve into attack defense CTFs. Because with Jeopardy, you can get to understand some of the things you're going to see in attack defense CTF. Now, attack defense in the sense that when I say attack defense is, it could be that you actually it could be like a simulation, right? Where you're actually expected to actually attack the machine now, right? While on the other hand, it could be like another simulation where you have two different people. Now, who are these two people? You have the attackers, that's the offensive security folks, and you have the defensive security folks. So it's more like a game, right? Just like football now, for example, right? You have the attackers of the other team trying to attack, right? That's trying to score a goal in the other team. Now, the defenders of the other team have to find a way to block that goal from gaining access or entering into the goalpost. That's just how this is. That's why we call it attack or defense CTF. So my advice is start with Jeopardy CTFs. You have a lot of platforms that actually offer Jeopardy CTFs. You have Over the Wire, you have Pico CTF, and a whole lot. And of course, here at Hack IT, we also offer Jeopardy CTFs and also attack defense CTF. So yeah, that's basically it. Then for tools, okay, I remember something now. For tools I use. Now, I won't mention specific tools. For example, for challenges under steganography. Now, I don't know if you've heard of steganography before. That's literally embedding something inside something. It's under cryptography. We use tools like StegHide, StegSeek, and a whole lot. But then John Hammond, if we all know John Hammond, I would take it as we really do not know who John Hammond is. And John Hammond is a cybersecurity professional, a popular cybersecurity professional, right? I think I'm going to drop a link to his YouTube page on the chat so you can check him out. Now, he has a curated list of CTF tools, or let's say tools specifically for CTF. Now, you have to understand that the tools you use for CTF are not necessarily the tools you use in a normal, ideal organization or real world context, right? There are specific tools designed specifically for CTF challenges, and it has a curated list. For example, you see something like steganography. Okay, these are the tools you're going to use for steganography. Binary exploitation, these are the tools you use. Reverse engineering, like that. So I'll drop the link now in the chat so you guys can check it out. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Gideon, for such a brief explanation. So is there any other question? Because I'm not seeing any other questions being dropped in the chat. Or I don't know if somebody has raised their hands. Okay, there's nothing as of now. So anybody wants to ask a question? We're going once, twice. Sorry, who unmuted him or herself? I'm not sure because I don't have visibility. Um, Asibe, do you have any question?
No, sir. No, I do not.
Okay, awesome. So, Gideon, what we're gonna do is
Hello?
just give your closing remarks because it seems there is no any other question from the mentees. So, just give your closing remarks, and then we can call it a day from here.
All right. The only thing I have to say, I really do not have much, right? We've had our discussions and stuff, right? But then I will say this. Now, for you mentees, right, take this bootcamp very, very, very serious, right? I'll use myself for an example. When I came into the bootcamp last year, I was the only Nigerian. I don't know how many Nigerians we have now in the bootcamp. I was the only Nigerian in the midst of different people, right, from Kenya, Tanzania, and the like, South Africa, and all of that, right? And I took it upon myself that I have to make a difference, right? I'm not just doing this thing for fun. I have to actually learn properly because trust me, what Hack IT is offering you, is going to offer you, is a whole lot. And the interesting thing is you're getting all of this for free. I'm not sure you paid any money for this. You're getting everything for free. You have a lot. In Nigeria, yeah, if you're going to learn all the things you're going to learn in this bootcamp, you have to pay heavily for it. When I mean heavily, I mean heavily. Ask Nigerians, they will tell you, right? So come in with your A game because trust me, as you progress, you're going to have your kind of competition or something where the best is going to be selected and all of that and blah, blah, blah. So come in with your A game, take things very, very serious, ask questions when necessary, right? Reach out to mentors or reach out to Karim here, right? Ask questions, put in your A game and learn. You're not learning to impress anybody, you're learning because you actually want to be useful, you actually want to be relevant in the cyberspace because currently a whole lot of things are changing, right? So just enjoy the boot camp, put in your best, ask questions, and you will be fine. I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Gideon, for great wise words that you were departing with. But um, I just don't want to put you on the spot. But also, you mentioned something very important about the industry keep on changing, and right now there is the big buzzword which is AI. So, do you have any pointers for the mentees to take home with in relation to AI or anything like that?
Yeah,
But
sure, I do. That
yeah.
escaped my mind. Thank you for bringing it to my notice. Now, the concept of AI is actually going and growing very, very fast, right? And personally, I'm a fan of upskilling, right? In fact, upskilling is my second name. I love to upskill a lot because I want to stay relevant. I don't want to become obsolete, right? Now, in the world of AI, a whole lot of things are trending, especially in the concept of generative AI. You as a person, after this boot camp, you want to take it upon yourself and learn things like prompt engineering. Very, very important. Trust me, it might look like as if prompt engineering is like a waste of time. Someone will be like, what exactly is prompt engineering? It's not just to type something on ChatGPT or Grok or Claude or whatever and just get no. There's a way you, as a cybersecurity professional, or as a pen tester, you can use it for OSINT, you can use it for reconnaissance. You're going to prompt the AI model in a way, the LLM, in a way that's going to return result that it is not meant to return. I've done it a whole lot of times, right? So you want to learn things like generative AI, prompt engineering, agentic AI, right? Artificial generative intelligence, AGI, and a whole lot. Currently, where the world is projecting, which we are kind of afraid, I mean, in the AI community, is a time where AI is going to be able to fully replace humans. And that's where AGI, or when we get to what we call AI super intelligence, becomes a reality. And for us, or for us not to get to that point, or even if we're going to get to that point, you have to start now to start learning the dictates of AI. AI can do a whole lot of things. Recently, I did something some days ago, right, where I had to come up with a prompt, and I prompted the AI to give me more like how do I call this now? More like a modeled version of myself or something, right? Now the result it's returned is actually crazy, very, very, very crazy. Now, when you see that result, you would think I went to take some kind of photo shoot or something with some kind of photographer or something, but no. I only uploaded a normal image of myself, then gave it the right prompt, specifying details, right? Even using role play, context, and all of that, giving explanation, giving examples too. And it's giving me what I want. So you want to take it upon yourself to upskill, because currently the world of AI is growing very, very fast. In fact, in the context of cybersecurity, I'm sure you must have heard of OAPS. OAPS is like a platform or a community that publishes vulnerability, top vulnerabilities that affect application. They are for web app, mobile app, cloud native apps, and the likes, right? Currently now they've been publishing top 10 vulnerabilities for LLMs, that's large language models, right? Now you want to take it on yourself. That's to show you that AI is actually trending. Like, it's a big thing. AI has come to stay. AI is not running anytime soon. The earlier you start learning how it works and seeing how you can apply it to your life, the better for you. Because currently, a time is going to come. If you ask me, based on my calculations, or projections, a time is going to come where the average or the traditional cybersecurity professional would be replaced by one that actually understands how AI works and how you can utilize it in cybersecurity operations. Trust me, we're getting to
Exactly.
that point. I do not want to be such person. So yeah, that's
Mhm.
that about AI.
Thank you very much, Gideon, for such insights. And I'm glad you touched on, different aspects of AI and talked about the agents, etc., which is very important in the current era of AI. And as you have mentioned, that AI is, going very fast. The industry is adapting very fast than anybody can catch up. So we have a lot of catching up to do, especially combating all these deep fakes and the likes. So, with that being said, Gideon, thank you very much. I really appreciated your time and efforts that you've given us on this bootcamp and this live session. We really appreciate it, and looking forward to working more with you. For the mentees, the labs are already up. I've already released them, so you can just go and now start solving the challenges, but also others will be introduced further on now for the practical bit, where you can get your hands-on experience on how to do vulnerability research and analysis on that side. So once again, thank you each and everybody who had made it here today, and looking forward to interacting with you in the group and having further conversation in relation to this topic of vulnerability research. So thank you very much, and see you in the next session, guys. Cheers and goodbye, everybody.